all about food, tips for cooking and choosing the right foods at the right time. I had the pleasure of working with Aditi for a number of years, and she's taught me so much about cooking. We have some cooking sessions on Sundays between 4 and 6 on Zoom. They're so much fun. I learned how to eat better, healthier, and we have discussions. Often, Dr. Ganguly joins us, who is our chef vegetarian. We have other people who are meat eaters, fish eaters, but one of the foundational things about health is eating well and cooking better. And so, Adita, thank you and your team for putting this together. Take it away.
Yes, so like Dr. Curnew said today, we're just gonna kind of go over some tips for cooking and choosing the kinds of foods you would like to be eating. And this is going to take like more of a broad perspective, so introducing you to a lot of different tips and tricks that you can use in your everyday life. So on the agenda for today, we're planning to talk about fast food, so how you can manage to eat healthy when you're eating out. We're going to talk about optimizing your current diet and use some of the highlights from our Sunday dinner sessions, the sessions that we ran on Sundays, and the different topics we've discussed thus far. And finally, we'll just answer some of the important questions that kind of arise when we have discussions about food and nutrition, and introduce you to some resources that you can access to kind of help you make these changes. But before we get into talking about fast food, we actually want to talk about one of our initiatives at the clinic. So I'm going to pass it off to Adam to do that.
Right. Thank you, Aditi. I'll just do a quick introduction. So my name is Adam. I'm one of the students here at the clinic with Dr. Curnew. I'm the head of the Sugar Club and Cardio Mobile, which we'll talk about these two in just a second. Here you'll find on this slide is the summary sheet. So feel free to, it'll be in the description. So if you just click the link, it'll help guide you a little bit just to, just keep track of all the information that's sort of going on. Okay. Thank you. Perfect. Right. So Sugar Club. What is Sugar Club? We do a lot of things, but mainly we put on webinars, which you'll see about diabetes management, physiology, all the different stuff, and how can you take care of it, as well as we do individual phone calls. So if you want to follow up, set goals, someone to speak to regarding that, if you have any questions, more individualized support, we could offer that, and that's some of the stuff we do. Sugar mornings, which we'll talk about in just a second, and diabetes intermission. So on the next slide here, so Sugar Club is sort of split into two. So we have the main Sugar Club, which is just one-on-one support, booking you with a diabetic educator, and then speaking to you individually and just sort of helping you out that way. We also run the Sugar mornings, which are the first Saturday of every month. Our next one is going to be on December 4th. And we did one in November, which it will be on our YouTube channel pretty soon. The one on December 4th is going to be about Ozempic and weight loss. And that one is really, really important. I think I'd love for you guys to be able to join us and sort of learn more about Ozempic. And then our second one here is the Diabetes Intermission Club. So what is diabetes intermission? Just briefly, remission really, you can't really cure diabetes. It's just more like bringing down the sugar levels to below the diabetes range. And so usually what that can look like maybe is stopping some of the diabetes medication and just getting healthier. And the way you do that really is just to lose weight and to eat better. And so our theme here is the 30 pounds at 30 weeks. Dr. Curnew, do you want to add anything here?
Yeah, I think is that the sugar hour taking place on Saturdays between 9 and 10, and we'll give some phone calls afterwards, and it'll be like a little like breakfast exercise if you want to, and we have different themes, and there's always time for questions. So we're going to try to make that snappy. One of the things is diabetes is that when I started practice, less than 5 to 10% have diabetes. Now it's 30% it's going to turn out by a 20-year-old born today has a close to 50% chance of having a lifetime risk of diabetes. So we need to really think about how to do that. And one of the backbones is weight. So those are some things to think about. There is science, direct to trial you mentioned, and broad. So we're going to actually base that based on science, have some fun. So come join us. Next slide, please.
Cool. So we'll talk quickly about the Cardio Mobile device. That one is really, really neat device. And essentially it's a one-lead ECG where you can sort of take home and you connect it to your phone or tablet. And all you have to do, as you see on the screen, just put in your fingers and then it can measure the heart rate. So on the next slide, we'll talk about that quickly here. What we hope to do with it is, oh, just on the next slide. There we go. Okay. What we hope to do here is, taking blood pressure readings daily, walking up to 3 times a day, and recording the cardio mobile if you feel any symptoms. So chest pains, maybe, or palpitations or any of that sort, just to sort of see if there's any correlation there, as well as, reading and following the 30 Days to Healthier You book that we have at the clinic, and some of the different clubs and webinars that we do. Really, what this is just a comprehensive goal setting and measuring your vitals as much as possible, and just setting accountability. So again, that's part of the Sugar Club. We could do that, and then so Dr. Curnew, you're gonna jump in here.
Yeah, so this is one of the pillars of health is activity, exercise. So we have our 3 M's: mindful, meditation, movement, and this is an active phase of this. For 1 to 2 months, we will give you on loan a cardiac mobile device where you can actually keep track of your heartbeats, your heart rates, and we'll monitor things like the Kansas City questionnaire. We'll look at your quality of life, and we'll improve your quality of life if you participate. So if you're interested, just sign up. Next slide, please. And so now we talked about, you got to lose 30 pounds, you got to exercise most days, and how do we make all this work in some better way and things of that nature. So we're going to learn how to do a better way of that. So one of the things we all want, fast food, and let's hear about fast food.
Yeah, so let's get into it. So when you hear the word fast food, a few kind of places or things may come to mind. For me, places like the ones on the screen popped into my head. So what exactly is fast food? According to the National Institute of Health, fast food basically are foods characterized as quick, easily accessible, and cheap alternatives to home-cooked meals. And these foods are typically kind of high in saturated fats, sugars, salts, and calories. So if you consume fast foods pretty frequently, it can actually negatively impact your health and cause serious long-term health conditions like obesity or diabetes. But yeah, we're going to walk through this section and kind of figure out why people may choose to eat fast food and what we can kind of do to make our fast food options a little bit healthier. So first off, let's go over some fast food facts here. So as you can see on the screen, on average, Canadian households will spend 26.9% of their food budget on fast food purchases from restaurants. And then also 54% of Canadians also report that they consume fast food at least once a week. And fast food makes up approximately 6.3% of daily energy intake for Canadians. So these statistics kind of show how consuming fast food has become a lot more frequent, and it's a pretty big staple in Canadians' lives today. It has become such a big part of our diet, despite knowing that it might not be the healthiest option. However, what is good is that when we become aware of our choices and make conscious decisions when it comes to our food, we can kind of help shift this narrative. So as you can see, the fourth statistic down there, adults who regularly take vitamins and consume fruits and vegetables actually tend to consume fewer calories from fast food. So this kind of shows that by learning more about the foods we consume, we're able to make those better choices, and that can help us become healthier individuals. Yeah, so like I mentioned before, we know fast food is bad for us, but why do we really consume it? Well, it's quick, it's convenient, and it's easy. So we really only have to spend 3 to 5 minutes maybe going through the drive-through versus maybe spending 30 minutes preparing dinner. And that really does appeal to people, especially when they're in a time crunch or when it's in pretty close proximity to them. So one study actually found that fast food access was associated with more visits to fast food establishments. What this means is that when you're kind of more frequently around fast food, or you might live close to fast food places, or they might just be by your workplace or other things like that, you're more likely to kind of consume those foods. But what was interesting was that when people were closely connected or had quick access to supermarkets, they actually had less fast food visits. So they would rather pick something up from the grocery store, like maybe chicken for dinner, or fruits and vegetables, a can of beans, rather than going and getting that burger from Burger King. So it's interesting to see how distance and access to fast foods can really impact our decision when we make it. So how do we kind of limit our fast food consumption? I know for me, I actually worked at Wendy's throughout high school, which is a pretty popular fast food restaurant. And during our working time, employees actually got around 50% off to buy food on their break. However, instead of doing this, what I typically did was pack lunches for myself the night before so that I could make the decisions on what I put in my body rather than just picking a burger or chicken strips up during my break. So that a good tip when you're out and about, maybe during holiday season, would be packing some snacks in your car or in your bag. It could be some healthy whole grain crackers or maybe some carrot sticks, things like that that you can snack on the go, so you're less likely to make kind of stop in those drive-thrus to pick up food. So now I understand that in some situations, fast food may be the only choice you have, or it might be kind of a social activity for you and your friends and family. So in these cases, we do have some tips to keep in mind to try and kind of help you make those healthier choices when it comes to fast food. So the first thing we're going to talk about is keeping your eye on portion size. So I know from the kind of employee stance, one of the main questions that we're told to ask our customers is that, would you like to upgrade your combo to a medium or large, or would you like to supersize it? Questions like that make you think, oh, for a small fraction of the price, I can get more food. That's a steal. However, typically these portions are actually way bigger than we actually need to fuel our bodies. So just trying to stick with the maybe lowest option or kind of regular size would be a good idea to kind of help ensure portion size stays the same. Also, be wise about your sides. So maybe instead of getting fries or onion rings, try getting like a baked potato or maybe a side salad, or if they have kind of fruit and vegetable sticks or apple slices, those are other great options to have instead of having those fried foods. Also, try getting dressing, sauces, or condiments like mayo on the side. In this way, especially since these can be pretty high in fat, especially saturated fat, you can kind of control how much you're putting on your food rather than having the employees at the establishments decide that for you. Another thing you do is you could opt for baked, grilled, or broiled options over fried or breaded options. This way, you're getting less trans fat, less saturated fat into your diet, and you're just really opting for kind of the healthier ways to prepare these meats or vegetables. Also, another really quick tip is to load up on vegetables. So let's say you're at Subway and you can choose between getting like a ham sub or a vegetable sub. Try your best to load your sub up with those veggies because typically it doesn't really impact the price at all. And there's a great way to get a variety of nutrients in. And also it kind of fills you up on these vegetables rather than filling you up on like different meats or cheeses, things like that might be a little bit worse for you. Another great option is to opt for leaner cuts of meat or vegetarian options if they're available. Those are really great ways to kind of help control the amount of fat. Another great thing is to prioritize fiber, protein, and healthy fats because these are the things that are going to fill you up. Those French fries aren't really going to fill you up. They're really high in carbohydrates, which are good in some cases, but don't have the things that you need in order to kind of make you feel full at the end. So fiber, protein, and healthy fats are a really great way of doing that. Another great thing is to be mindful of your drinks. I know for me, I'm a water gal. I love tea. Water, tea, even sometimes coffee might be a better option than having high sugared pops or high sugared like juices, because it's a way to still stay hydrated, but also limit your calorie and limit your sugar intake. Another great thing is to pay attention to the descriptions on the menu. So you might see like a grilled chicken wrap, which could be, oh, that might be a great option for you. However, it could have like a chipotle sauce, a mayo coating, things like that in it. So just make sure you're not just reading the brand, the item name, but reading the description that follows underneath it to see if you can make any alterations or make any adjustments to your meal to make it a little bit healthier. Another thing, if you know you're going to a restaurant, maybe you have reservations with your family or reservations with your friends, try to plan in advance. Instead of making a rush decision while you're sitting at the table and socializing, try to pick an option that you know is a healthy option before you even go to the restaurant, so you're better prepared when you sit down, so you can spend that time socializing, but also make those healthier choices for yourself. And last but not least, the most important in my opinion is to listen to your body. You don't have to finish everything on your plate. If you think you're full, you're full. Take a step back. You can always box up your meal and take it home for later. But don't try and stuff your face, or don't try and fill yourself up when you're already at your capacity, because that's only going to make you increase your calorie intake, increase your fat intake, increase your sugar intake, increase your salt intake, which we don't really want. So make sure you're listening to yourself, and hopefully these kind of tidbits will help you make a little bit healthier choices when you go and eat out. But I'll pass it off to Aditi now.
So thank you for that description of fast food and how we can implement some of those tips in order to make better choices when we're on the go. So now, speaking about your diet, we want to talk about different tips and tricks for optimizing the way that you're eating and the way that you're planning your meals. And a lot of these discussions actually come from our Sunday dinner sessions, which we'll talk about later. But if you're interested in joining those, these are the kinds of topics that we talk about on a monthly basis. And that's primarily where this content came from. So in terms of the key components of your diet, you do need a combination of macro and micronutrients. Your macronutrients are your carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Your micronutrients are vitamins and minerals. And you need all of these things in your diet in order for it to be balanced, in order for your body to get the nutrients it needs to function properly. And you want to make sure that in order to achieve kind of the best balance of these nutrients, your diet includes sources of complex carbohydrates, so things that you would find in fruits and vegetables, and certain starches, whole grains, unsaturated fats, fiber, protein, tons of colorful fruits and vegetables. And the image on the right, as I'm sure many people will be familiar with, is from the Canada Food Guide, which kind of shows how you should break down your plate. So half of the plate should be fruits and vegetables, a quarter should be proteins. So try to pick leaner meats if you're choosing meat, try to pick fish if you're choosing to eat something that's not a plant-based protein, or if you have the option, choose to make that a plant-based protein, and then try to choose whole grain foods for that little carb portion, and they're also a great source of fiber. And finally, as we've already discussed, make water your drink of choice. So the first tip, if you're trying to optimize your diet or a meal, is to add beans. So beans have so many benefits. They're a great source of fiber and protein. Soybeans, which are the type of bean that contains the most protein, actually contain all 9 essential amino acids. So these are amino acids you can't manufacture yourself. You rely on diet in order to get them into your body. They're lower in calories and saturated fats than most animal proteins, and they can also be a source of folate and antioxidants, with antioxidants present in different legumes being connected to potential anti-cancerous properties. So there's a lot of evidence out there about the benefits of beans. So a 2017 meta-analysis found that legume consumption was associated with a lower risk of cardiovascular disease. A 2013 review and meta-analysis showed that beans actually reduced the risk of coronary heart disease. And a 2018 review talked about how beans actually help with glycemic control. So from a perspective of controlling your sugars, perhaps you have diabetes and this is something you need to be mindful for, it's always a great idea to add a source of beans as your source of protein for a particular meal or particular diet plan. So just a few things to be mindful of if this is a tip that you would like to implement. First, they do take a while to cook, so you might need to plan a little bit in advance. Something that you might not think to do if you were using another source of protein. So if you're cooking dried beans, the recommendation is either soaking them in hot water for a couple of hours before you cook them, or soaking them overnight to make them cook a lot faster. And the quickest way to cook them is to pressure cook them, but you can also just boil them over the stove. Another thing to be mindful is you have to be mindful of the portion size. So as I mentioned earlier, they're a great source of fiber, but there is such a thing as too much fiber. So you want to make sure you cook your beans adequately, properly. Even if they're slightly overcooked, it's better than them being undercooked, because that could be too much fiber for your body to handle. And in terms of cost, there's kind of a misconception that in order to eat more healthy, in order to go more plant-based, you have to spend more money. And that's not in fact true when we think about beans as a source of protein. In fact, per 100 grams, it's cheaper than the meat proteins that you might be able to purchase. So if we take a look at the chart on the right, so for certain legumes, beans of various canned varieties, chickpeas, they're all 32 cents per 100 grams. And then when you look at other sources of protein, so things like beef or chicken, you're looking at $1.40. So there is a difference in price, and that kind of signifies that you're not really changing your grocery budget a ton by opting for a different source of protein. And in terms of the protein content, again, there's a misconception that you're going to get the best bang for your buck when it comes to eating protein and protein absorption from animal proteins. And while animal proteins in moderation can be a great source of protein, the plants are also equally as good. So if we take a look at this chart here, for 1 cup of black beans, you're getting 15.2 grams of protein, soybeans, 28.1 grams of protein. You're getting a bunch of protein from things like lentils, so 1 cup gives you 17.9 grams of protein. And if we take a look at the other columns, we can see that in general, beans tend to be lower in sources of fat, and most of the fat content tends to come from unsaturated fat, which is beneficial fat that we want to be consuming. And they also have a lot of fiber. So they make your meal satiating while giving you 2 to 3 essential macronutrients. And that's why they're a great thing to add to any of your meals. So if you're thinking about how can I make my meal more complete, how can I make it more satiating, think about adding some beans as a side. The best option would be to try and cook them dry, but if you don't have time for that, if that's not within your budget or your time capacity, you can always opt for some canned beans. Try to opt for one that's not like high in sodium and just rinse them out real good. So our second tip for you is to try and use healthy substitutes. So try to make everything as homemade as possible. So if you're thinking about your favorite dish that you like to order at a restaurant, or your favorite like frozen meal that you like to buy from a grocery store, think about how you can add homemade components to that, or how you could make those meals homemade. So if we're thinking about like baking and baked goods, so thinking about dry ingredients, you probably want to substitute any sort of white flour with whole wheat flour or oat flour. You probably want to substitute sources of sugar with other sources of sugar that probably might work a little bit better. So thinking about taking away the white refined sugar and maybe replacing it with maple syrup or honey. You could also use fruit sugars. So instead of a fly in my room, instead of trying to add white sugar to a baked good, maybe you use a couple of ripe bananas, or you use some applesauce to add some more natural sweetness. And then finally, for fats, you want to substitute saturated fats like butter for healthier oils, so things like olive oil or sunflower oil, flaxseed oil, and use low-fat or fat-free dairy products where possible. And finally, for any sort of component that might be sweetened, you want to opt for an unsweetened product. So unsweetened dairy, unsweetened nut butters, things that don't have excessive added sugars in them. So our third tip for you is to add whole grains. So whole grains, as we saw on the Canada Food Guide image, are a key component of that plate. They are rich in healthy fats, vitamins, so vitamins E and various B vitamins. They also have phytochemicals and antioxidants. So if we take a look at the right, on the right, there's an image of what a whole grain actually is. So you have your germ, this is where all of the nutrients are packed. You have your endosperm, which is that starchy carbohydrate middle layer. And then you have your bran layer, which is the outer layer. So oftentimes when you're not eating a whole grain, when you're eating like a refined grain, they have stripped away the bran and the germ, and they're just leaving you with the endosperm. So they're kind of taking away those essential nutrients that you can really get from whole grains. So the bran and fiber helps maintain steady blood sugar, and fiber helps also lower cholesterol. So if cholesterol is a concern for you, if you're trying to make changes in your diet in order to reduce cholesterol, definitely think about adding whole grains. Fiber may also help prevent the formation of small blood clots that can trigger heart attacks and strokes. And finally, whole grains are a great source of magnesium, selenium, and copper, which are important minerals that our body needs to consume in order to maintain various bodily functions. So all in all, a great idea to add whole grains to your meal. Not only do they make the meal more satiating because they're a source of fiber, they're also giving you a lot of essential nutrients. And if you're interested in learning more, we actually have a whole video on whole grains on our YouTube channel, so you can check that out to get some more details. So in terms of choosing from whole grains, and this is something we discussed at length in one of our Sunday dinner sessions, there's actually a hierarchy. So there are some grains that you can pick that are better than others. So at the top, we have intact whole grains, so things like wheat berries, barley, oat groats, quinoa. Then you have broken grains, so steel cut oats, cracked wheat. You go on to rolled, so rolled oats, barley, rye. Shredded whole grains, things like shredded wheat, ground whole grains, whole wheat flour and its products, flaked, so cold flake cereals, and finally puffed, so things like puffed wheat, rice, and millet. So if you're really thinking about incorporating whole grains in your diet, you can look at this hierarchy, see what fits in your budget, see what's accessible to you, and pick something off here. And when you have the option, choose one thing that's higher on the hierarchy over the other. So for instance, if you tend to eat a lot of rice because that's what you have, that's what's accessible to you, that's what's within your budget, once in a while try and throw in another grain in there. So perhaps you pick some quinoa instead of rice one week and you swap those grains out. And that's going to give you like a great variety while also being able to work within what you're able to afford and what you have time to cook. So whole grains have a lot of benefits. That's why we recommend adding them to your diet. So a 2016 meta-analysis found a reduced risk of mortality per 90 grams of whole grain intake. So we're looking at a reduced risk of 17% for all-cause mortality, 22% for cardiovascular disease, 15% for diabetes, 15% for cancer, and that's a broad spectrum of cancers, and 22% for respiratory diseases. So we can see that some of the benefits of whole grains with those micronutrients that it has and also the fiber that it has broad-reaching implications on long-term health, which is why it's a great idea to try and include these as you're able to in your diet and in your meals. So our next tip is to reduce added and refined sugars. So we all purchase a lot of processed foods. They're easy, they're accessible, they have a long shelf life, but oftentimes they tend to have a lot of refined or added sugars. And these are things that as you're consuming various foods can slowly add up and take you to a point where your body is just consuming way more sugar than it needs to be. So according to the World Health Organization, less than 10% of your daily caloric consumption should come from sugar. So we're talking about like 12 teaspoons in a 2000 calorie diet. And less than 5% of calories coming from added sugars is associated with increased health benefits. So the average intake in North America is around 17 teaspoons of sugar, added sugar a day, which is frankly too high. If we're talking about like the standard being 12 teaspoons, you're overshooting that by 5 teaspoons of sugar. And additionally, if we're talking about 6 teaspoons being the absolute ideal because of all of the health benefits, you're almost tripling that amount. So one simple way to do this is to avoid white bread, flour products, or store-bought baked goods, just because they tend to have additional refined and added sugars there in order to preserve their shelf life. And if we're talking about specific foods and the added sugars that we can see in these foods, so soda, for instance, has 10 to 12 teaspoons of sugar per like can that you're consuming. Flavored coffee can have between 7 to 18, fruit yogurt between 9 to 12. So even though yogurt can be a great source of probiotics and protein, you're adding that sweetened fruit in there, and that's increasing the amount of sugar. You're much better off just buying some fresh fruit or taking some frozen fruit and tossing it in. Energy bars can be 5 teaspoons upwards, and flavored instant oatmeal, even though oats are great for you, when you buy flavored instant oats, they often have more sugar than you would normally put if you made oats for yourself. So just a few things to be mindful of. I know with the holiday season, we all love our sweet treats. I personally am a huge fan of like Starbucks drinks that are holiday themed, but just be mindful that they do have like a lot of sugar and see how that kind of works within your caloric budget. So if you're thinking about the context of your day, the context of your week, and you notice you're constantly consuming these very sugary products, you want to try and scale back on that. You know, a treat once in a while, that's okay, but not something that we want to be doing every day. So our fifth tip is eliminating processed foods. So this starts with identifying processed foods. Simplest way to do that, if something has a really long shelf life, they probably have a bunch of additives and processing in there in order to make it last super long. So when in doubt, just go for whole foods, foods that don't have a nutrition label attached to it. So go to the produce section, pick out some fruits, pick out some vegetables, go to the frozen section, pick out some frozen fruits and vegetables. That's the best way to kind of combat this and make sure you're not filling up your grocery basket with processed foods every time you go to the grocery store. So processed foods are also foods that can be eaten with little to no preparation. So if we think of like canned foods can be a great option, but when they're stored in things like high sodium solutions and syrups, it's not the best choice. You can always go for the whole food version, which is going to be the best choice that you can get. So the next tip, and this is a lot easier said than done, is trying to reduce oil. So we have mentioned that unsaturated fat, or fat in general, is an important macronutrient, and we want to be getting most of our fat consumption from unsaturated fats. A major source of that is nuts, seeds, and plant-based oils, so olive oil, things like that. However, fats are incredibly calorically dense. So we're looking at like 9 calories in terms of compared to like 4 when we're looking at fats versus like proteins or carbohydrates. And so a small amount of oil has a lot of calories associated with it. This is not to say that you need to necessarily cut oil completely out of your diet, but you need to be really mindful in the amount that you're using. So if you're trying to cook without oil, the first step to working towards that is to try and reduce the oil. So first off, pick a great oil to cook in. So if you're not cooking at high temperatures, olive oil is the best oil to use and should be extra virgin and cold pressed. It has those antioxidant properties and those polyphenols that are associated with blood pressure lowering effects and anti-inflammatory properties. So it's the best kind to use if you're using any sort of oil, but again, you want to be limiting the amount you're using. So try using like a teaspoon rather than multiple tablespoons. And if you're using recipes that call for oil and butter, you can try and find substitutes. So for instance, if a recipe is calling for butter, maybe your first step is you substitute it with olive oil. Maybe your next step is instead of olive oil, you do like half olive oil and half like banana or half applesauce or half some other sort of alternative. You can also conserve oil while cooking by trying to cook what you are cooking in stocks or oil-free sauces, sauces that may not contain like a ton of additional calories or sodium, etc. So those are just some tips towards working towards being able to reduce the amount of oil that you're using in the food that you're preparing. And our 7th tip is add a lot of vegetables. So when in doubt, add color to your meal. So we often tend to kind of think about, oh, what vegetables are associated with what benefits and what nutrients. And the simplest way to tackle this problem is just eat a lot of colorful foods. So include as many different colors of vegetables as you can because they're going to have different nutrient profiles. And that's what's going to make your diet ultimately the most beneficial for you. And if we're talking specifically about like root vegetables, which are a great source of fiber, they are the definition of a complex carb, and cruciferous vegetables, which have been linked to several anti-inflammatory, anti-cancerous properties. Vegetables like these tend to have sulforaphane, which is an antioxidant, antimicrobial, anti-cancerous, anti-inflammatory, a neuroprotective, anti-diabetic compound. So many fruits and vegetables have all of these chemical compounds in them that have these variety of properties. Essentially, it boils down to fruits and vegetables are good for you, so eat a large variety of them. And when in doubt, bulk up your meal with those. And our 8th tip for you today is to choose your micronutrients wisely. So if you remember when we talked about the components of diet, we were talking about how you have your macronutrients, so things like proteins, carbs, and fats, and then you have your micronutrients, which are your vitamins and minerals. Vitamins and minerals are essential for helping your body build up its systems and its processes. They're involved in immunity and maintaining proper physiology. So it's important to ensure that you have micronutrients present in your diet. In fact, in Western type diets, the diets that's predominantly consumed in US and Canada, people tend to underconsume micronutrients because they're consuming more processed foods and less fruits and vegetables and whole foods, where all of these micronutrients reside. So if we're talking about micronutrient sources, if we think about vegetables, you can get your B vitamins from leafy greens, calcium can come from broccoli, kale, turnip, vitamin C from peppers, magnesium from leafy greens again, selenium from broccoli, iron from spinach. Fruits, again, have a lot of different sources of these various vitamins and minerals. Same with grains, dairy and meat to lesser extents, but they can be sources of some vitamins and minerals as required. So speaking specifically about micronutrients that are typically of interest to patients, the first thing to talk about is iron. So iron is essential to maintaining bodily functions, and these functions can range from DNA synthesis, an incredibly important process, and electron transport, another incredibly important process, to metabolic processes and oxygen transport. So iron goes beyond just being the center of hemoglobin, which is required for oxygen transport. It's actually involved in a variety of different bodily processes. But bringing it back to hemoglobin, iron's located at the center of hemoglobin, which is present in our red blood cells. It's what helps carry oxygen. And iron deficiency can lead to anemia, which can make you feel more tired and potentially more prone to getting sick more often. So iron consumption varies based on age and also based on sex. So we can see in this table over here, based on the age and based on whether you are male or female, your iron consumption needs may vary. So for instance, if we're looking at people from the ages of 19 to 49, for males, it's recommended to get 8 milligrams. For females, it's recommended to get 18 milligrams. Another important consideration is if you're someone who menstruates or if you're someone who's vegetarian, you need to actually eat additional iron in order to maintain these requirements. And if not, it might be recommended that you get an iron supplement. And we'll talk about whether or not you need to get supplements in the upcoming slides. So plant-based diets are they get the bad rap for saying that you can't get adequate iron from them. And that's usually because when we think of iron consumption, it falls into two broad categories. Heme iron, so hemoglobin, so iron that comes from that sort of source, and non-heme iron, which is what you find in plant-based sources. So heme iron primarily comes from animal-based sources. Our body tends to absorb that more easily. However, the downside of that is when you're eating like tons of animal-based sources of iron, you're also consuming additional saturated fat. So it's kind of about finding that balance. And while non-heme iron, the type that's found in plants, is harder for our body to absorb, it doesn't mean that we can't absorb it, and it doesn't mean that there aren't plenty of sources. So in plant-based diets, phytate, which is the storage form of phosphorus in plants, can inhibit iron absorption. And this is partially the reason why it's harder for us to absorb iron from plant-based sources. So vegetarians, as a result, may need up to twice as much iron as people who consume meat, fish, and poultry. And if we look at plant-based sources of iron, we can see that they're present in a lot of different things that we can incorporate into our diets. So things ranging from soy to white beans to green lentils to tofu to spinach to kale to beetroot. So again, making sure that you're eating like a variety of colorful fruits and vegetables can kind of help you meet those iron requirements. And if you do think you are iron deficient, you can speak with the physician and see whether supplementation is indicated in your case. But speaking of absorption, there is something you can do to increase the absorption of non-heme iron, so plant-based iron, and that's consuming it with vitamin C. So vitamin C may enhance the absorption of iron, and some experts suggest pairing non-heme iron sources with a vitamin C source. So for example, if you're eating a bunch of spinach, maybe you pair that with some citrus fruits and get your vitamin C in along with the iron consumption, and that will kind of help you absorb more iron. So next up is magnesium. So magnesium plays a role in immune function, blood pressure, and nerve function. Adequate magnesium intake is associated with a lower risk of osteoporosis post-menopause, so extremely important for people who might be undergoing this process. Magnesium deficiency is associated with worsened insulin resistance, whereas adequate magnesium consumption is associated with a lower risk of type 2 diabetes. So again, important for kind of that process that's implicated in type 2 diabetes. You want to make sure that you're getting an adequate amount of this micronutrient. Magnesium deficiency may increase the risk of cardiovascular incidents, and magnesium therapy can also help improve migraines and PMS symptoms. So low magnesium levels are thought to implicate our HPA axis, which is the axis that's activated in times of stress. So overall, magnesium has a bunch of different functions in our body. We know that getting adequate magnesium is associated with lower risk for various conditions, and having magnesium supplementation may also help with symptoms of various conditions. So overall, deficiency, not something we're looking forward to. So with that being said, how much magnesium do we need? Well, the recommended daily allowance for adults aged 9 to 51 years is 400 to 420 milligrams daily for men, 310 to 320 for women, and pregnant individuals will require around 350 to 360 a day while they're pregnant, and then during lactation that drops back down. So there is an upper tolerable limit, so like a max limit that you can reach for magnesium. So maximal daily intake, and this is the amount that's unlikely to cause harmful effects. You exceed this amount, that's when you could be looking at having too much magnesium and having side effects from that. So the upper limit for magnesium is 350 milligrams from supplements. So with that being said, we probably want to get our magnesium from more plant-based sources than we do from supplements. So what are some plant-based sources? Well, you can get magnesium from pumpkin seeds, hemp seeds, spinach, cashews, Swiss chard, sunflower seeds, edamame, just to name a few. And next up is calcium. This has become a very popular discussion, especially when we talk about the risk of osteoporosis. Calcium actually goes beyond just maintaining bone integrity. It's important for neurotransmitters to be released. It's important for your muscles to function. And as a result, calcium is an essential nutrient that you do require in your diet. There's also that important interaction with vitamin D. You need adequate vitamin D in order to absorb calcium. And I bring this up because considering that we've plunged into a time of more dark hours, we often think of the sun as our main source of vitamin D. There are other sources of vitamin D. This is why most dairy products are fortified with vitamin D. But a lot of us probably aren't getting as much vitamin D as we need, and that can kind of affect our calcium absorption as well. So just something to be mindful of. Because it's known that vitamin D deficiency can lead to calcium deficiency. So how much calcium do we actually need? Again, it varies based on age. And I was actually kind of surprised by this trend. I assume since we drink so much milk early on in life that the calcium needs were probably higher as a child, but they actually increase as you age. So just because you might grow out of the phase of having dairy products, which are often considered to be the best source of calcium, you still need to keep in mind that you need to include sources of calcium in your diet every day. So in terms of sources, there are several foods that are rich in calcium. So you can actually buy fortified foods that will often be fortified with calcium, and that's a great way of getting your intake in. So things like fortified oatmeal. You can also consume dairy if that's something that you're able to. So things like milk or yogurt. You can also get them from a variety of plant-based sources. So sesame seeds, soybeans, tofu, baked beans, frozen yogurt, other things like that. So just to keep in mind that you do require calcium in your daily diet. And while oftentimes eating a variety of plant-based sources of food can get you there, if you find that you're sometimes lacking on that calcium aspect, these are some foods you can think about including in your diet in moderation. So we talked a lot about micronutrients, and oftentimes at the clinic, we'll get patients coming up to us and saying, oh, I take all of these supplements. And it kind of begs the question, do they really need these supplements? Do you, as someone who's thinking about your micronutrient intake, actually need these supplements? So if you think you may need a supplement, the best thing to do is speak with your physician. The supplement industry is largely unregulated, so you could be over-consuming certain nutrients by taking supplements. You want to try and get them from your diet as much as possible. Obviously, this is not an option for everyone. And in the event your body is not getting adequate nutrients and your physician recommends that you should take a supplement, that's when you can take that step. So for instance, if you're thinking about iron supplementation, you can always speak with your physician. They can run a simple complete blood count, look at your hemoglobin. If they're concerned about iron deficiency anemia, they can also look at the ferritin levels, and that's going to tell them whether you're at risk for anemia, you probably have anemia, or you're doing just fine. And based on that recommendation, they may or may not recommend that you take an iron supplement. For things like magnesium, Magnesium is actually like a laxative, so please don't try to take it yourself. Like speak with someone before you decide to take it. That can have a lot of negative effects on your gastrointestinal system. So again, speaking with your physician to see if magnesium is something that you might require in your diet. Remember, this is also one with that upper tolerable limit, so you don't want to be exceeding that. And then for calcium and vitamin D, again, you can speak with your physician or another healthcare practitioner if you think that these are things that you might be deficient in. For vitamin D, there is actually a lab test for this. Unfortunately, it's not covered, but if you speak with your family physician, you can talk about getting this ordered to actually check your vitamin D levels. So kind of wrapping up our tips again on the micronutrient train, sodium and potassium are important minerals to consider. And our 9th tip is watching your salt intake. So many processed foods contain excessive sodium, and this is kind of part of their processing or preservation process, and this can significantly elevate blood pressure. So the simplest way to do this when you're looking at different groceries in the grocery store is to actually check the nutrition label. So look at the total amount of calories and then look at the milligrams of sodium and kind of see how they compare. So for instance, if we're looking at this nutrition label here, you can see that one serving has 240 calories and 430 milligrams of sodium. So you don't want this sodium number to be higher than the total caloric number. If it is, it kind of signifies that your food might have a little too much sodium. So just be mindful about that consumption. And there are plenty of other ways to add flavor to your food instead of salt. So you can use a variety of different ingredients: onion, ginger, garlic, several spices like pepper, cinnamon, turmeric, etc. So to talk about the benefits of replacing sodium with potassium, so the SSASS study was something that was conducted and it investigated whether a salt substitute that was higher in potassium reduced the risk of cardiovascular events compared to regular salt use. So the results showed a 14% reduction in the risk of stroke, a 13% reduction in the risk of adverse cardiovascular events, and no elevated risk of hyperkalemia, which is high potassium, when using the salt substitute. That kind of shows us that there is a real benefit to your overall health if you're reducing the amount of sodium you're consuming and trying to increase the amount of sources of potassium. So with that in mind, there are plenty of different sources of potassium. So dried fruits, raisins, apricots, beans, lentils, potatoes, winter squash, spinach, broccoli, beet greens, avocados, just to name a few.
So Aditi, just backtrack one slide again. So here's a randomized control trial. Just back up one slide if that's okay. So this is actually a huge trial. And so it took people that had stroke, was done in China, or I think it was around 20,000 people, and they actually randomized to a salt substitute. Salt substitute is basically less salt and more potassium. And it showed a reduction of stroke by 14% and cardiovascular events by the same magnitude. So this is huge. We know that too much salt is no good, and more potassium is good. So these are obviously, you have to have reasonable kidney function. You have to have your GFR above 60 in this circumstance, but this is wonderful. Next slide, please. So instead of a salt substitute, I'm going to eat less salt in my food, and I'm going to add more spices and more garlic, and I'm going to eat a lot more rich foods and potassium that you list in here. So I love spinach. So what I do is I take spinach and I put it into everything. And look at potatoes. Potatoes has more potassium than bananas. And so this is something is that you want to replace salt with potassium. You can get a salt substitute, or you can just use food to do this. And thanks for sharing that. And again, if you have bad kidneys and you have too much potassium, that's a little different scenario. But that's really a small percentage of people. So so look at your kidney function, your GFR, look at your potassium level, and talk about this. But this is really important. Everybody wants to take less pills. Well, this is the way less pills. You can lower your blood pressure by less salt and lower your blood pressure even further, but more potassium, and prevent stroke, heart disease. So thank you so much. Look at that. Look at those wonderful foods. I have to say something is that Aditi and her team has showed us how to cook these foods, and and you have to come on Sundays, and it's such a wonderful thing. My wife hates those weeks because I mess up the kitchen, but she comes through and we get all the ingredients and we make a mess, and it's such a fun mess, and we batch cook as well. So thanks so much. Next slide there, Aditi. Thank you.
Yeah, so we've talked about a lot of information, a lot of different tips that you can incorporate into your diet. But oftentimes it's a lot easier said than done. So we're going to be answering just some popular questions that have come up that patients are kind of concerned about, and then introducing some resources that you can access and use in order to kind of help you on this journey. So in terms of questions, this is one I've been asked a couple of times. How much protein is too much protein? So yes, it is possible to overeat protein like anything. Even if the food is considered good for you, it's possible to overeat it and consume too much. So eating too much protein, especially in one sitting, can place a lot of stress on the kidneys, and it can actually be a source of dehydration. So your body can also only absorb a certain amount of protein in one sitting, and that's usually 20 to 25 grams of protein in one sitting, and one sitting is about 1.5 to 2 hours. So in terms of how much protein you need, the recommended daily value, which is kind of like the lower end of the spectrum, is 0.8 grams per kilogram of your body weight for protein. If you're physically active, this can be more, and if you're, a big athlete, it can go up to like 2 grams per kilogram of protein. So given that your body can only absorb 20 to 25 grams of protein in one sitting, the best suggestion is to actually make use of protein-filled snacks and eat your protein in different chunks throughout the day. So you're not eating like a lot of protein in one meal, but instead you're taking that amount of protein that you might put into one meal and eating it at multiple points during the day so that your body is just able to better absorb it. And to give you an idea of what 20 to 25 grams of protein looks like, on the right, we have a plant bowl with some quinoa, with some tofu, with a lot of different fruits and vegetables. And this is what would equate around 20 to 25 grams of protein, primarily coming from the tofu, but also in small part from the quinoa. Another example is if you were to pair like Greek yogurt with a banana and like an egg on the side, that is also equal to about 25 grams of protein. The other question that comes up a lot when people are thinking about eating more healthy, organic versus non-organic. So organic foods are grown without the use of artificial chemicals, hormones, antibiotics, and genetically modified organisms or GMOs. Non-organic foods can be exposed to synthetic chemicals, and antioxidant levels can be up to 69% higher in organic foods. Nitrate levels, with high nitrates being linked to certain forms of cancer, can be up to 30% lower in organic foods. So the level of cadmium, which is another toxic metal, is about 48% lower in organic foods as well. And organic milk tends to contain higher levels of omega-3 fatty acids, iron, different vitamins, but lower levels of certain minerals like selenium and iodine. And eating organic can also reduce your exposure to pesticide residues and antibiotic-resistant bacteria. So based on all of this information, you would think that it's better to eat organic. The research is actually very mixed. So organic food may contain more antioxidants and nutrients and have reduced exposure to artificial chemicals and hormones than regular food. However, in order for regular food to be available, it's still within different limits and regulations. So it's not to say that you're going to be exposed to a lot of different chemicals by opting for the regular option versus the organic option. The risk of exposure to pesticide residue in most foods is relatively small. There's a list called the Dirty Dozen, where there are some foods where it's better to go organic if you have the option. And you can always kind of look that list up and refer to it if you are thinking about organic versus non-organic. But for majority of foods, you can often opt for the regular option. The organic foods can also cost a lot more. So for some people, it's just not feasible within their weekly budget. And they can also spoil a lot faster than regular food. And given that majority of food waste tends to come from individual households having to throw away prepared food or produce, it might not be the best choice if you're not able to constantly use your produce in a timely manner. So overall, there's just a lot of mixed evidence. It's not clear whether eating organic will have additional health benefits. So it kind of comes down to personal choice. If you prefer to eat organic, that's something that you can afford, and that's something that you genuinely enjoy and it's working well for you, then by all means, go for organic products. But for the majority of individuals who might not have that extra money to spend on organic foods, you don't need to be shopping organic in order to be eating healthy. In fact, by going for local produce, that's probably the best way to support the environment, to support local communities, and also to get the most nutrients out of your food. So just keep that in mind. Just because something says organic doesn't mean that it's necessarily better or something that you might need to opt for. And the next big question, and this is actually part of the theme for our next Sunday dinner session where we're talking about cooking for the holidays, is how can I stay healthy during the holidays? Well, try to add fiber. So if you're eating your rich like holiday meal, add a side salad to it. That's some extra fiber, some extra nutrients. Swap out saturated fat for unsaturated fat. So swap out butter and margarine for oil, nuts, and seeds. Reduce the sodium. So opt for no sodium added broth, or use salt substitute, or use other spices to flavor your food. Add fresh and dried herbs and spices to add flavor, and slow down and be thoughtful. So don't try to restrict yourself before like a family meal or a holiday meal. That can often lead to like binging and overeating. Instead, make sure you just eat normally before you go to this meal, and then slow down and be thoughtful when you're actually eating. So think about what you're choosing to eat. Prioritize the veggies and sources of protein over carbs and fats, and just kind of be thinking about why you're eating, and the process of eating as you eat, to kind of slow down the way that you're eating, but also be really mindful during that process. The next is to make it at home. So if you have the option of getting some cranberry sauce at the store or making it yourself, try to make it yourself. Take advantage of frozen fruits and vegetables. So a lot of times the things that you might want to cook with or eat might not be in season. They might not be good quality. Just opt for the frozen version. Frozen fruits and vegetables are often picked in their prime, so they have great nutritional value. And it's a really easy way to add a lot of fruits and vegetables to your meal. So say you're cooking up something, or you got some healthier version of takeout and you want to kind of optimize this meal, take advantage of fruits and vegetables, just throw in some frozen veg into the meal. Bring your own snacks. This is something that Haley had mentioned earlier on. If you're concerned about eating over the holidays, just pack your own healthy snacks and bring it along. And be mindful of your meals throughout the day. So don't try to skip meals and then overeat at this particular meal, or overeat during that holiday period. Just enjoy everything in moderation. So make sure that you're taking small portions of the foods that you like, and you're not kind of restricting yourself to the point where you feel like you need to overconsume that food. Again, vegan and organic doesn't always mean better. So if you're buying, holiday treats, holiday snacks, just because something says vegan and organic doesn't mean that it's any less processed or calorically dense than another option. So just look at the nutrition label when in doubt. Add flourishes to your meals and sides and experiment. So try a new dressing on your salad, try a new spice blend for your protein, try a different side dish, maybe try a vegan version of a side dish. Just make the process fun for yourself, so that if you're choosing to make a healthier meal or eat a healthier meal over the holidays, it's an enjoyable process for you. So now that we've answered some of those questions that we often get asked in our sessions, let's talk about some resources that you can use to help you out. So we do have our YouTube channel. There's a ton of videos on there, especially about diet. So these are just a few of them that I've listed out here. So whole grains, reducing triglycerides, easy and healthy meals, the science of plant-based eating. But we really have a lot of different videos on there that you can kind of go search through and look through and find in order to watch and kind of learn more.
So one of the things, if you just backtrack there, is that one of the ones I really like, reducing triglycerides. So today we saw a patient who had triglyceride in the clinic of 35 to 40. Normal is less than 2. And obviously that's a very high value, but triglycerides can be actually changed dramatic with lifestyle changes. So one of the things, if you have a triglyceride level above 3 to 5, alcohol will really accelerate that. So all the white foods, all the white sugar, white flour, the only white foods you can basically eat are like egg white, skim milk, cauliflower, onions, and burning it off with exercise. So this person, again, 40 down to 2. He did take a medication, but he also made some diet lifestyle changes. There's this whole controversy about high-fat diets right now. Whole grains that you mentioned is very, very, very valuable for cardiovascular health. I think it's important to try different diets. We have our high-fat diet. We have a healthy one. It's fish-based, which I kind of like, and whole grains, and how to eat for less. And there's one from Chad, his Chad cooking tips. There's just so many different ones in there. So if you, we'll show you how to sort of search that. But these are really important to take the time to learn. Now we're talking about theoretical things today, but really, come cook with us. It is so much fun. We have arguments about different parts of the diet, some great tips, so please take the opportunity to just to learn. It's fun. Go ahead there, Didi. And Didi and her whole team has done a phenomenally a great job.
Yeah, so aside from our YouTube channel, we do have some other resources. So Dr. Kearney's mentioned Dr. Ganguly, who's a gastroenterologist. He usually joins our Sunday dinner sessions. And he is really into plant-based eating. He's very knowledgeable about these topics, and he actually has these plant-based eating sessions. So it's a 6-week kind of course and session that's running on Sundays. It's great for individuals who are looking to become more plant-based eaters and learn more about that process. So there's a lot of information on nutrition and different changes you can make. If you are interested in signing up, you can definitely send us an email to drcurnew232@gmail.com, or let us know the next time you have a phone call with us or an appointment with us. And if you're interested in learning more about Dr. Ganguly's program specifically, you can check out the video. So if you just plug this into YouTube, it should pull up the video. He does have a YouTube channel with the video available that gives a little more information on these sessions.
So he's a great guy. He's certified. He feels very passionate about. He's lowered his triglycerides with diet and lifestyle changes. So what he's offered is this is that if he has a group of people that, first of all, you need to have somebody else that wants to support you. They want someone else in your family to do this. You want to be predominantly plant-based eating. You have to learn how to know to use Zoom, can speak adequate English, and they're going to do 6 Sundays in a row for about an hour and a half or so. It's a wonderful learning experience, and for those who want to explore plant-based eating and really to work at it, that's one avenue to that. So let us know, and he's going to put a group together starting in January, starting the new year for our clinic, and he wants to do maybe 4 times a year or so. So if you're interested, terrific. Lots of learning, and I love chatting with them and have some things. So, Didi, what did we cook last time from in our last session?
So our last session, we did healthy snacks. So we made our own hummus and our own like optimized avocado dip. And then we talked about how to make snacks healthier. So we do a lot of fun topics like that. There's always a theme every session, and we try to make it very much tailored to what patients want to learn about, so that we can give them, tools and recipes they can actually kind of implement in their diet going forward.
And what did we do the time before?
So before that, we were doing healthy substitutes. So we talked about like a meat substitute that's plant-based that you can make at home. And we also did a substitute for a cheesecake. So we used tofu instead of cheese. If you really enjoy cheesecake, it's not quite the same, but it's pretty close in my opinion. So,
and we're cooking, and I remember I got the pressure cooker out, and I almost blew the house up. The pressure, I think we're supposed to go for like 5 minutes or something on the pressure cooker, and I was going for I think like a couple hours there or something, and so it was so much fun. I used the bullet last time, and made some really nice hummus. I froze some the avocado dish, and it's just wonderful. And I've learned so much because of you and others, and and it really is that you can actually cook and eat for less if you're careful. And so lots of frozen fruits and vegetables this time of the year. Root vegetables are still in vogue with what's on special. Whole grains and overnight oats is something that I did, and again tonight is that I have some blueberries, some oats, touch of honey, and I always add some chia seeds to it, and make it's like a pudding mixed, and really delicious, and lots of different soups and things of that nature as well. And throughout the pandemic, most people have gained weight out of pounds, and it's been a lot of hard work, but a lot of fun, and it is so much fun. So please join us. One in, I think, December, is it 4th or 5th Sunday, December I think it's the 5th, if I remember correctly. And we're going to be cooking from 4 to 6. We're going to be healthy holiday foods and eating better with that. So we're looking forward to that. And here's Dr. Ganguly's website. It's a fantastic white sauce. So the hummus recipe is from his website. And it only takes a few minutes. And because there's no preservatives, you have to eat it relatively quickly. You can make it a couple of times a week if you want to. I use my son a magic bullet, and it was presto. It was delicious. And you can cook oil free, and there's a part on his website how to do that as well. And so learn how to recook and to cook better and healthier. And the flavor of this food is wonderful. We showed you one randomized controlled trial that a salt substitute, which is lower in sodium, higher in potassium, decreased stroke and cardiovascular outcomes. So you can do it with pills, or you can do it with food in this circumstance. Now, don't never be afraid to use the proper medications, but food is a great medicine, and we're not using enough of that. Wonderful website. What else there? More. Oh, good, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, so just a little bit more about our Sunday dinner sessions. So they're held once a month on Sundays, usually either the first or second Sunday of the month. We run them from 4 to 6 p.m. over Zoom. And typically before this, we'll send you an email with what we're planning to do and the ingredients in case you want to cook along. We always have around 3 to 4 people who are trying to cook along, and it's always a lot of fun. And if you're not someone who's looking to cook along live, there are lots of opportunities for observing and discussion. So it's really a place for anyone who is interested to join. And they're held over Zoom, and we also help call patients and support them in case they don't know how to use Zoom and kind of introduce them to that process. So our next session, as Dr. Curnew mentioned, is December 5th. So it's actually next week. And the theme we're doing is cooking for the holidays. So in terms of what we do, there's recipe demonstrations every time. So we always have a recipe that kind of fits the theme that we introduce to the patients and everyone who's attending. And we have a video filmed for that you can follow along live. We talk about the nutrition, not just of the recipe, but of whatever topic we're discussing that month. And we usually answer a lot of different questions that come up about how you can make this modification in your diet, or if someone's interested in learning about a new food, we have a lot of discussions about that as well. The most important aspect of this group is that we're a support group. So we're there to kind of help you out and help you stay on track. So if that's something that you're looking forward to, something that can keep you accountable, definitely consider joining us, as we do provide that support. So if you're interested in joining, again, just send us an email or let us know the next time you have a conversation with us, and we're more than happy to add you to our sessions. On the right, I have a couple of pictures of some of the dishes that we've made. So we have a corn salad that we made when we were talking about using fall harvest ingredients. Then next to that is the healthy substitute cheesecake version that we made with tofu, which by looking at it, you can't really tell it's tofu, and you can't really taste it's tofu either. So something interesting if you're interested in that. We have our root vegetable and lentil stew. We made a mango coconut curry once, and then we did an optimized version of pad thai. So we do a lot of really interesting and cool recipes. And these are just a couple of snapshots from some of our sessions. So every session is recorded. So you can see in a couple of them, we're having discussions. And this one at the bottom, Dr. Curnew is talking about switching to kombucha as his drink of choice when he's craving something fizzy. And we usually go through a couple of slides, we go through the videos, and we have a lot of really fun discussions. So it is an exciting time. If you do want to join, we highly encourage that you send us an email and we can get you ready for the next session.
And there's always a recording of the food, how we're cooking it, and so you're actually basically cooking if you want to, or watching as you cook too as well. So it really is it's a fun time, and you know, there's some really good cooks and bad cooks, and there's people like me who can blow up the kitchen if you're not careful. But we have lots of fun, lots of learning, and it's always healthy and a lot of good laughs. So please join us.
So this is something new that we actually discussed today at the clinic, but we're going to start like a new initiative that's a bit more of a support for patients who are looking to like make the change. So in our Sunday dinner group, though it's open to everyone, we do have a lot of individuals who really invested in cooking and are therefore like quite knowledgeable about some of the topics already. But if in the event you're completely new to this and you would like a lot more like individualized and group support, this is a new initiative we're going to start. So we're going to do sessions on the last Saturday of every month. We're going to focus on patient support, providing information on transitioning to a more plant-based diet, and also answer patient inquiries and address specific areas of interest. And this will provide individual and group support, and we're hoping to get this started in the new year. So if this is something that's of interest to you, kind of stay tuned to learn more and send us an email if this is something that interests you.
So this will be, it also could be just for, you don't have to be a plant-based eater if you want to. If you want to say, listen, I want to get healthier cuts of meat. If I want more chicken, fish, that's fine too as well. To me, the best source of protein on the planet comes from beans. Why? It's number one, it's good for the animals. Number two, it's great for the environment. Remember, for every gram of protein, you have to take about 6 to 7 grams of animal to make an animal protein from cattle, and it's healthier too as well. So I'm not trying to tell you how to eat right now, but this is something that I love bean burgers at this point. Real bean burgers, and Beyond Beef, what you buy at the fast food restaurants are no healthier than a regular hamburger, but you can learn to make better ones on your own. You can also learn new techniques. I've learned to use an instant pot sometimes, and magic bullet. Some people use air fryers, how to use your oven with convexity heating, and all sorts of different things, and just how to make oatmeal better, and how to pick a yogurt, or how to there's just so many things to learn. And please look at those videos, take your time to absorb, but also come join and bring your questions. And this is open to everybody. You don't have to be a patient of Dr. Curnew. You just have to be a person who wants to eat better, eat healthier, and we'll relearn how to cook simple things. You can cook from a microwave. You can cook from a instant pot. You can be a fancy baker, or you can just be a person who doesn't even have a stove and wants to eat healthier. So wonderful. So please join us, and please try something new. Remember, try things for 30 days at a time. That's our motto: 30 days to a healthier you, done over and over again.
Yes, so our last support that we want to talk about is the weight management group, and I'm going to pass it off to Dr. Curnew if you would like to introduce them.
Sure. So Mira's in charge of our weight loss group. She's been working on this for a couple of years now. Devanshi first started this, and actually Zoya started before that, and Devanshi now in medical school, and now Mira. It's a fun group. We meet from 7 to 8 on Tuesdays, and just a wonderful discussion. There's some people that have lost 70 pounds. Some people have come and gone. Some people have lost no pounds, but guarantee you learn something new and feel good about yourself and things of that nature. So if you're interested, sign up. We'll be glad to have you participate. You don't have to make each time. If you want individual calls too as well, we can do that. So the important thing is just trying something different, and we'll find a time to chat with you. Do you have another? Do you have the good? So keeping the weight off. And then what we have is called the 3 M's: mindfulness, meditation, and movement. And there's a group of 4 young individuals that really have taken this to a high level. I learned to understand my human behavior a little bit better. I know most of us have between 40 to 80,000 thoughts in our head every day. Most of them are unpleasant, bad, and repetitive. I learned to slow down the world, and from chair exercises to just getting together and learning some of the theories behind it in practice. What another wonderful group that meets on Wednesdays at 7 o'clock for an hour or so. And I always feel a little bit better. And if I've had a difficult time, I feel stronger, and I go back and finish off my calls and things of that nature. So anybody that's interested, please let us know. Again, as that we have our Facebook. I want to thank Stuart for getting all this organized, and others. This is a group of 50 plus young people that have made life better for me and you, and take advantage because there's so much to teach us. And I really appreciate their hard work. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be here tonight. So we thank you for. Thank you, all my patients who are trying. Only get mad at yourself for not trying, and just try something different. Try it for 30 days. And I just want to thank everybody for listening, for participating. This is one that I hope people will listen more than once, and participate. So the new year is coming up, and so I heard at the beginning is that putting diabetes into remission, we can do that. If you're overweight, losing 30 pounds and keeping it off for 2 to 3 years can put about 70% of people into remission who have diabetes for less than 5 years, type 2 diabetes. You also feel better and stronger. Activity is wonderful. I'm going to be playing hockey tonight. I'll make everybody look better, especially on their team, because I'm the worst player on the team, but I really enjoy myself in the round of players, so I have to go and substitute tonight. So I look forward to that. I have a few more calls to make tonight. I will get them done. And Dee Dee and Haley and all her team have really worked hard at this. Mira and her team, Jerry and his team, Adam, Daniel. There's so many people to thank. And first of all, Stuart, any questions out there at all?
Not at the moment, but we have some people on YouTube. So if anyone does have any questions, you're more than encouraged to leave them in the comments, and we can address them before we head out tonight. But at the moment, there's no questions. So Dr. Curnew, do you have any final thoughts? I'd love to share some of my own as well.
So being healthy is hard work and a lot of fun too as well. We have phenomenally good medications that are useful, but we also have equally phenomenally good lifestyle changes. And food as medicine is really, really important. Activity, mindfulness, these are pillars of health. One of the things that I got my best sleeping score last night. I didn't finish till around 10 o'clock, and I slept on the sofa here in the clinic, got up at 6 o'clock, and got a text from Adam to go walking. We did the Wentworth stairs. I was thinking, do I go or not? But when he texted me, he's going, I'm going. So so come join us for all these sorts of events. And so I think I got my first 80 on my sleep score. I didn't think I slept that well in the clinic, but I guess I slept better than I thought. So I learned from the webinar from Dr. Kolchak about sleep is another pillar of health. So I'm working on that too as well. So I just think is that I feel bad for people who say I can't or won't, and I say I will, I'll do, I'll try to get better. I may not always do, but I can do it. You can do it. Aditi, any final thoughts?
I think you summed it up really well. Lifestyle changes are definitely something that a lot of us can work on in order to make our overall lifestyle and our health a lot better. But it's a lot easier said than done. So it's important to just think about the little things that you can do and slowly work your way up towards making those long-lasting, more sustainable changes.
Yeah, it's I tried rock climbing for the first time, and I thank Carl, one of our patients, who got me out there, and my wife was out there, and it was fun. We did this in Burlington, and going to go back, and so I bought a 30-day membership thanks to him. I'm very awkward on there, very stiff, but I had some fun. I'll try something different, and I hope you will try your explanation of being healthy. And so we're going to have some of these things on Saturday mornings, and some to try. We have them on evenings, and if there's a time that you need some support, we'd be glad to. Please encourage everybody to be healthier. We'll give the last word to Stuart.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to say, for me, my takeaways today are there's two sources of motivation that really keep me going. It's the motivation that other people put onto me, other people motivating me, but then there's the motivation that comes within myself, which can sometimes be a lot harder to hold on to consistently. I've always told myself that, okay, when I'm out of university, or when school slows down a little bit, I'll get my health on track. I'll be able to, start cooking and exercise and get into a good routine. And now that I've been taking one gap year before going back to school, I've found, okay, well, I'm thinking of a million other excuses for why I can't do this. So I've kind of forced myself, or found ways to force myself, to try and get a new routine or get these new lifestyle goals into my daily life. Funny, Dr. Curnew brings up hockey. I started playing hockey recently as well for the first time in 4 years, and I actually play with one of our co-coordinators, Connor, and he shows me every single week how bad I am in comparison to him, but it's okay because we have fun. And since joining the Sunday dinners, I always try my best to come to them every single time I can. And for me, being home now, I have a lot more independence in the kitchen. And I'm trying to sort of integrate some of the things that I'm learning, this vast wealth of knowledge that is keep seeming to accumulate but not apply into my daily routine. So I've made some small lifestyle changes. I've learned about glycemic index, and that the big bowls of grapes that I eat all the time, those are kind of high on the glycemic index, or at least moderate. So maybe try getting some more lettuce in there, getting some apples in there. I tried doing grapefruit. I can't convince myself that I enjoy it, so I'll have to find some alternatives. But then also, trying to have more salads with my meals, drinking a big glass of water before I start my meals. All these little things which maybe don't seem like a big deal, but once you start making a routine out of it, it just becomes second nature, and I feel a lot better. I feel more active. I feel more energized. So when I'm coming home from work, for example, I feel like I have the energy to be productive as opposed to maybe taking naps and things like that. So I've noticed it in my energy level. So that motivation that's come within myself has been helpful, and then continuing to have a good support system around you has been really crucial. We talk about the Harvard study all the time, which just talks about one of the best predictors of quality of life and longevity is having good quality relationships. So finding a good support group to help you integrate your lifestyle, your diet into your daily life is certainly something to consider, and that's why we have these support programs in place to be some motivators for you and to be someone who you can sort of lean on if you feel like that's something that would benefit you. So with that, that's my sort of wrap up. I just wanted to thank everyone for joining. I want to thank Haley and Aditi for putting together a great presentation. I want to thank Dr. Curnew again for providing wonderful insights. And I'll pass it back to Dr. Curnew for my final question to you is, since joining these Sunday dinners, what are some of the things that you've integrated into your daily life that sort of had a positive impact on your overall health?
I think there's numerous. I never heard about kombucha before, and konjac noodles, making my own hummus. I still take my Lipitor every day. And remember, high dose Lipitor can decrease cardiovascular events up to 50%. But also lifestyle changes. Is that the foundation to health is trying to get a body mass index down to 2025. But the proof of the pudding is my body mass index is 24 at this point in time, and this is the first time in the last few years to be able to do that. Maybe to keep it, I don't know, but all these different courses and classes and events have made that different, and the sharing of ideas, and it's just to trying new things, and it's wonderful. So to me, it's just an exploration. So I encourage you, try something for 30 days, repeat it 30,000 times, try something different, and find things that work for you. So we talked about Ozempic is one medication that can help for weight reduction. I'm using it off label. I'm not using it. I'm using intermittently, not every week or whatever it may be. But it got me started. Dr. Ganguly came into my life a number of years ago and taught me about quinoa. Chad comes in with all his antioxidants. We go shopping together, and it's always a 3-hour event going shopping with Chad, and it's so much fun. So I've learned so much from so many people, and people shared so much, and I hope we can share some things with you too as well. So go out there and be healthy, get healthier, and just enjoy the journey, because you can do it. I can do it. Everybody can do it. Good night, everybody. Have a great night.
Good night, everyone. Take care.